Make sure you mute yourself so you don't echo.
There you are.
Good afternoon, everyone. We're just giving everyone a minute to join in. It's usual that we pop in at 2 all the way up to like 2:03 or so. So we'll just continue to get everyone on board, and then I will offer a prayer and introduce our speaker. Is it sunny by anyone today? Everybody got clouds? Still cloudy in Madison? Still cloudy? Dang. The meteorologist told me today via the television set that the sun had a chance of winning, but I believe he was wrong. I'm gonna give people just another couple of seconds and then we'll go ahead and get started. Let's open with a prayer. Good and gracious God, we give you thanks for calling us together this day, for calling us from our multitude of ministry settings and concerns, joys, and sorrows. And we thank you for allowing us to set aside this time to be in conversation. Allow us to focus, to rest, to renew, and to listen. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen. Well, it's my delight this afternoon to introduce to you our webinar leader today, Mr. Bjorn Hansen. And Bjorn Hansen is a psychologist with the UW Health System. He's the systems specialist. And he is a person who has hung around Lutheran communities his whole life, having been born a pastor's child. He's the son of Dwight Hansen, who was with Bethel Horizons. And he is also married to a spouse, but I'm not to a pastor spouse. I won't disclose her name. You're just going to have to figure that out on your own. Because those of us married to other pastors, sometimes we don't want to let you know who we're associated with. So you're going to just have to figure that out on your own. But welcome, Bjorn, and I'm going to let you take it away for our time together. So thank you for being with us.
Thank you so much. I appreciate the introduction. First of all, thank you all for being here this wonderful October afternoon. I'm kind of situated here. You guys can see me right now on our wonderful UW campus. And when I was asked to speak at this event, I was thinking, it could be really helpful to kind of put together like a full snapshot of what it's like to be a college student these days. So, some of you may have been a college student fairly recently or have someone in your life who is in that stage. But just thinking holistically about like what this is like going from everything from your finances to what you're going to eat, where you're going to live. And if you have kids, who's going to take care of your kids while you're trying to do this whole college thing? And also, where can we as a church be helpful? So I want to put forward kind of some of the challenges, some of the resources that we have, but also knowing that this is a wonderful group of Lutherans here. And one good thing about Lutherans is we have a great work ethic and we have very good ideas, and hopefully finding ways to connect with each other and with some of the outposts that we have here on campus, whether with myself or with Pastor Emily Twitey at Lutheran Campus Ministry. We're always looking for ways to connect, and especially as we're kind of coming back after this pandemic time, students are really craving the connection and community that can come from church, and seeing if there's creative ways where we can get some more inroads to be supportive and to keep our church strong. So without further ado, let me share my screen, and I'm gonna put it into presenter mode. Someone please yell at me if for some reason this goes horribly wrong as I try to share my screen. And also feel free to ask questions as we go. I'm not sure if I'm gonna be able to see people raising their hands, but You can cut me off. I'm used to leading, seminars here on campus where students are empowered to ask questions, and that makes a very rich discussion. So please feel free to jump in if you'd like to at any point, and we will have time to discuss at the end too. All right, so I'm going to share my screen here, and we'll go into presenter mode there. So hopefully this is looking correct to everybody. And our title is going to be Faithfully Supporting Our College Students and a Snapshot of a College Experience. All right. So I think I already kind of hinted at the overview of what we're talking about today, but I actually want to start, don't want to bury the lead, but hey, if you want to be a Badger, here's what it takes. And we're thinking, financially, upfront. So this is for an undergraduate student. The numbers might be a little bit different if you're in graduate school. And this is actually from the UW website. So like this is me just taking exactly what we're advertising out into the world. If you come from Wisconsin, it is estimated that it'll cost you about $27,500 if you're living on campus. About as cheaply as you can go is if you're being a commuter, and that's basically assuming that somehow your housing and meals is only $2,300. So really, if you're getting everything covered by your family, that's what it'll look like. If you're coming from out of state and not from Minnesota, you're over $55,000 for 4 years worth of tuition, like before any sort of grants or scholarships you might have. And one thing that you might hear about is this, like how students are trying to work themselves through school, but they can't do it. And the reason why that happens is, I did the math for us. It would take 1,835 hours of work at $15 an hour to cover this tuition. And that assumes that you're getting all of your expenses paid for and you don't have any taxes taken out. And you're not spending any money during that year. So basically you have to work a year to be able to afford a year. So that's where the balance of the cost of attendance is right now. And you might say, okay, so that's UW. How does it compare to other places? Well, I went to Luther, go Norse, and they have what's called a comprehensive fee. So they kind of lump everything together, like you're required to be on campus. The fee for this last year is at $57,000, which is, to me, kind of wild. I think that's more than double what it was when I went to school. I know I'm not that old, only about 15 years ago. So this cost of, and I see some chats coming in. Go North, yes, okay, let's go blue. All right, but this private education is about the same price as someone out of state coming to to UW. And if you want to say, okay, what if I want the creme de la creme, I want to go to an Ivy League school. I pulled some information from Cornell. And if you're adding it all up, so there are these different colleges you might go to, some different fees, probably around $80,000 unless you're from New York. And I agree, Fred, that is beyond the means of most. And it is, a major issues that our students, talk about and we try to grapple with as a campus community. What that looks like in terms of coming out of college, so some big numbers here. They look small, but they're in trillions, so it's big. I feel like the two numbers that I kind of want to focus on the most are over half of our students have to take some sort of debt on to pay for their education, and the average amount coming out of undergraduate is about $37,500. So a very significant cost to come to school. All right. So now that we all got our anxiety up and we're naming all the costs of school, we can also take a look at where maybe we can start to be helpful. And this is sometimes I think where like the church can come in and sometimes in creative ways. So I'm going to start you with a very dry slide of what it looks like to be working in college and some interesting stats that kind of come out from this research. So what we found is that students who work between 15 and 20 hours a week in a field that is connected to their major and can help advance their career, they have the best outcomes. So they get some, kind of some spending money, they get some experience, and it kind of helps build their resume for when they, graduate from undergraduate to go on to graduate school or go on to their careers. They have some relevant experience. We find that the worst outcomes are when we kind of cross that 20-hour threshold, start leading to getting worse grades, leading to, not being able to have that retention, because now you're trying to basically do a full-time job and full-time school, which should be taking you, 40 to 60 hours a week for most majors in terms of the time you're supposed to be in class and the time you're supposed to be studying. And oftentimes when people start working more than 20 hours a week, they start working, off campus or in fields where it's not connected to their major. So they're just trying to make as much money as they can. And it doesn't actually line up with their long-term career. The reason I wanted to bring this to this particular group is, I just know, like, with their congregations, that's something that I kind of hear, talked about, on Sunday mornings. Sometimes people ask me, well, what's like on the university? What's the the overall atmosphere, kind of like the vibe going on, what's needed. And I think one of the things that's needed is, more of these relevant jobs, more of these, experiences that students might have within a particular field. You have students who are very motivated to do work. And yes, there's a lot of things going on in the university, but there's still plenty of students who, are looking for, work, within their industry. And if we pivot a little bit to just making ends meet, so this is from a very large study of over 33,000 students in community colleges. We'll look at another slide like this for students in four-year colleges as well. But just taking a look at things like housing insecurity, homelessness, food insecurity among these, respondents, housing insecurity was, pretty significant. About half of the people in this study had some level of housing insecurity, within the last 12 months. And these different lines will say, what that means. Some might be, more intense, than others. And then as far as actual homelessness, not having a place to, to stay at a particular point, as at 14% in the last 12 months, or almost about one out of 7 people is what that would come out to. And then also any sort of food insecurity. So at low security or very low security, again, we have half of our students landing in that range. So those are some very, I think, kind of, sobering, numbers there. I want to bring this to, again, one of the resources I want to share. So this is on the UHS, which is where I work, University Health Services, our website. And if you're ever coming across students or just people who live on campus that are looking for food resources, this can be a great option. And tell me if this, can you now see a different screen, or is this showing you the same thing as before? I don't know.
Same thing.
Same thing? Okay. Yeah. So I can be creative with this. I can use the technology. All right. So we're going to go here. All right. So if you click on the link, and I think now we can see this link. So it's just our website, food assistance. There's a lot of videos, and hey, good on us. We have the Keep Food Pantry, which I believe is Lutheran Memorial, Lutheran Campus Center, so LCM. We have a couple places that are represented as like these feature videos on our page, as well as other resources on campus. So definitely worth checking out, as well as some individuals that people can get in contact with. And please contact our Dean of Students if sometimes you might be working with someone in your congregation who's looking for this type of support. If you know that they have a campus affiliation, there's probably be a lot more resources than they would if they were just another person in Dane County. All right, so I'm going to jump back to the other screen. Okay. All right, are we all on a new slide? Thumbs up, anyone? Yes, yes, all right, I figured it out. So now, as I mentioned, we want to bring in the four-year schools too. So like, University of Wisconsin. This is looking at homelessness specifically. And again, looking at percentages down here, when we think of UW, we have 45,000 students. So 1% of students would be 450 students. So, at 10%, this is, 4,500 students, would estimated be living, for a temporary time with a friend, couch surfing, something like that, maybe when they're, between moves. And then we're also seeing these percentages of people having, to live, in a hotel or motel, someplace that they're not meant to live, an outdoor location, transitional housing. We're looking, depending on how much overlap there are, with this, At 2%, that's 900 students, and we can probably assume that not each one of these is overlapping. So we're probably looking at about 1,000 to 2,000 students a year, navigating one of these, situations. So again, we have some resources I want to share from, the university, but also it's naming that, sometimes we think of homelessness and we don't think of a college student as being what pops into our mind. And even at four-year institutions, public institutions like UW, we're noticing this as a concern. And for those of you who just like to see things in a kind of a different graphical way, so we have the two-year institutions here on the left, the four-year on the right. The line is just the average institutional rate. So I think this doesn't have the exact number here, but it was dozens of different universities and community colleges. So we're seeing like where is the average rate of homelessness, the average rate of housing insecurity, the average rate of food insecurity. The box represents 50%. So that's really like your average. So it's not a fluke. It's not like we just took a study from one particular college and said this is an issue everywhere. This is something that is definitely happening here. And as I was promising, I also want to show you something from our Dean of Students office, which is this link right here. And sorry, just gotta click there. Let it load, and I'll share over. Okay. Another great resource where you can, have students or people who come to DW like submit a request. The food resources, I don't have quite as many here, but some of ours, like the Keep Food Pantry, is there as well. Financial resources, mental health, which will include, what we provide here at UHS. Employment, childcare, personalized assistance. We have tried to make this like kind of like a one-stop, shop for basic needs. And also, one thing is that I don't know everything that's going on in all of your congregations. So if you have programs you think that could be used by UW students, especially the closer you are in proximity to, any part of the UW campus, seeing if there's a way to get yourself on this list. Because I know a lot of times we have really good ministries, but we don't have that connection point. So feel free to contact me or contact, this office if you're saying, hey, we have this great ministry here. Is there a way that this could be of use to your service or your students? I'm sure we would say yes. And I know I'm probably preaching to the choir here, which I can say because we're all Lutheran. The correlation between food insecurity and health outcomes, yeah, it's pretty stark. So I mean, the more food insecurity you have, you'll have higher levels of medical concerns. It's going to impact growth in children, medication adherence, where it kind of makes sense. People don't even have the basic resources for food. It's going to be hard to keep up with other things that will keep them healthy. Higher probability of mental health concerns, higher costs, and more days of missing work or not making that income that they would need to get the food security. So it's a very core concern. And this is something that, again, I think might loop back to churches. We did our own research here. So at our clinic, in 2018, you can see we surveyed over 2,400 students who are here. 1 in 4 students reported some level of food insecurity. Higher likelihood with low-income families and some students of color. What we found in some ways like the most shocking is 28% of those students didn't know any food resources. They couldn't name one place, and this is of those 1 in 4 students who would need the food resources. Of them, about 1 in 4 didn't know a single place that they could get a hot meal or they could go to a food pantry. And that was just, honestly shocking to me. And in a different way, 3 out of 4 of those people didn't use any of the food resources. So they might have known about the resources, but whether it's pride or stigma or saying, "Oh, that's not for me," the students didn't take advantage of of what was there. So again, I can see like this is a place for for the church where like I love what LCM has done or has kind of done in the past of having that Wednesday meal where everyone comes. It's not just because you don't have the money to pay for it. It's a free meal. It's a community meal. It brings people together. That's a great way to reduce stigma. right? And I know, like, shout out to my home congregation right now of, Good Shepherd. We do things with the Holy Cow, the Church on Wheels, where there's a food cart, and it's like it's a goodwill offering, but everyone gets a meal, if you need it. And I think those types of services are really valuable anywhere in Dane County, and also with our students of, people might not want to self-identify as needing to have food assistance, but if there's those options and they're readily, accessible, they'll get taken advantage of if they're known about. And this is, just in terms of like kind of where people's, grades are, depending on if they have, food security versus, no insecurity, homelessness, no homelessness. And, we can see that there is a strain that gets placed on a person. And I don't think I have it in this slide deck, but there's, a differences in GPA when people are having to contend with these additional stresses. I also want to talk a little bit about self-care and dependent care. When we look at, and this is from like big picture, this is Department of Education data for a very long period of time here. We're looking at how many students are also mothers or fathers. And we're seeing this, high rate of, single mothers in college or post-secondary education. And there are, many student fathers as well. The question we get faced with often is just like, well, how do I manage this? UW does have a great site that I'll show you here, which is looking at all the different resources that are on campus. We have an office for that. So again, if the first question is, okay, I'm a UW student and I need to get some help, I'm hoping everyone knows of this resource, but we're a big university. It's easy to miss things. There is an Office of Child Care and Family Resources. All students get priority. So as an employee like me, as I tried, it was hard to find childcare for my kids here. But if you're a student, you're going to get priority, and they're going to hopefully find a way to work with you, being able to find reputable, childcare that's close to the campus. We want a name that is there, but also thinking for our churches and places we can step in. This oftentimes is a barrier for participating in other parts of church life, is being able to have that childcare, especially when finances are tight in school, so you don't have the money for any sort of babysitter. Gotta share here. What is going on? There we go. And put a different way, over 25% of all women and 2 in 5 Black women in college are mothers. So when we're thinking of finding ways to provide childcare, subsidizing childcare, just making it more inclusive, for these individuals to be students, this is a legitimate social justice issue that we're approaching as well. And what's interesting about being a parent actually raises your GPA, even though it's very big stress, and it's not like a huge raise. But if we're looking at these GPAs in these different quartiles, 3.5 and higher, 3.0 to 3.5, et cetera, student parents, they're actually leading the charge here, and they're not really trailing in any of these particular categories. So I just want to give a shout out to the student parents out there. They're working really hard, and they're also kind of got their eye on the prize and are doing well. So that's neither here nor there. I just wanted to say, hey, there's some good news here. I mentioned this before, our outpost. If you haven't been there before, check it out. I can almost see it from where I'm sitting right here. Lutheran Campus Center has been here for a long time. Has a lot of great resources. And if you're thinking, okay, like this presentation is getting you thinking about some way that you can partner, you can message me, but I'm probably going to loop you in with Pastor Emily, because she's quite good at building these connections and coordinating all of this. And I wanted to give another shout out to the Keep the Pantry And I actually left this slide intentionally blank. I'm guessing there's a lot more going on around campus connected to our churches than I know about. So I'd be happy to, to build on this as well. Last thing I want to mention before we kind of turn this over to a broader discussion. I was asking, a few different people of what students are kind of looking for in a church. So I'm not necessarily asking my students, themselves, because of my role here might not be the most appropriate, but I do have some connections on campus that have those types of conversations with students. And what they're saying is, the big thing students are looking for is, number one, connection. I don't think I even wrote it down here, but they're saying that they're looking for a place to connect that is, open to them, where they're not going to be judged. And then along with that, what does your congregation do to show the students are welcome? So, childcare has come up as far as, I mentioned that before, of like, do you have childcare during events? Is there a way that I can come and, be part of this? And whether that's formal childcare or just sort of like a clear understanding of like, oh yeah, kids are welcome. Do you have a space that's accessible for all bodies? So it's like, do you have ramps, automatic assist doors, for someone volunteering at the door to open the door? Are there larger chairs for larger body individuals, so people feel like, yes, I can just show up as myself and like it's going to be comfortable for me? Do you have at least one bathroom that's for any or all genders? Is there that immediate marker that I'm like, okay, like this is a place that is going to accept me, for myself without having to, put on any sort of mask, or without having to alter myself or be worried of how people will receive me. So I know this list can get, very, very long. These are some of the things I've heard most consistently, and things that, students are, fairly aware of or will bring up to me, if, for example, that wasn't, the case in someplace else at UW-Madison. So thank you so much for your attention. I have some prompts, but I'm totally happy to go off script, too. So, I mean, just these general, kind of, prayerful reflection of like, how can we support the financial, housing, food, and childcare needs of our students here? How can our congregation, I mean that for each one of you, is thinking, how can your congregation help students feel welcome? And are there other resources in this area that our students should be aware of? Because there might be things that are already going on, things that you're providing that we can then loop back to Pastor Emily or to myself, and for myself to our care management team. Are there links that are out there that we just haven't connected the dots yet, so we can serve our students better? Thank you. I'm gonna take away the questions here and stop the share so I can see everyone a little bit better.
So feel free to either drop your questions or comments in the chat, or just go ahead and unmic, and we can use this time for discussion. Someone has to be brave and go first.
So Bjorn, when you were saying that students who work 15 to 20 hours a week in their field have the best outcome, are you speaking mostly about like a paid internship? Or, because that's about all I can think of for a lot of those students. You're muted.
Thank you. It really depends on the major. So there are some like kind of maybe more like, harder science majors where they have to be working in a research lab. Like that's the only place they're going to get the experience that they need to be, competitive or to kind of push themselves forward. There are those places, and I know a lot of, other students who are kind of working more. I mean, it might be a formal internship through the university, or it might be like, well, I just work with marketing and communications through this like small company. I do some freelance work, for them. I get this experience, in the kind of real world. And oftentimes those happen over the summer. Like there's like a really good network we have at UW for getting students connected to those type of internships over the summer. But there's other students who are just looking for that during the school year. And I think in some ways, even just like naming that, I know a lot of students who are sort of saying like, I wish I could find work that is like more applicable to what I do. I just don't know where to go. Or like, again, like all the resources are geared towards the summer or geared towards if I'm going to do research. And if I'm just like a, personal finance business major, I would love to get some experience, like, doing some work within one of these fields. They can't find it. And I'm guessing, again, like on a Sunday morning, if I knew exactly what a student was looking for, I could ask enough people and someone say, oh yeah, like we actually need some help, this time of year. So that's sort of what I was having in mind, where this might be one particular person or particular situation, and just kind of knowing like there's this like untapped market sometime of students looking for meaningful work. But in my mind, I don't have a particular specialty. I think it'd be more of if there was something on your end that could be a fit, and just throwing it out there to the students to see if it's a good fit.
I'm wondering, at our congregation, years ago at least, we used to pack bags from our food pantry, like one bag that was heavily packed with things that were needed, one for homeless people who may not have microwave, that sort of thing, and one for a family that has accessibility to that. Is anything like that going on that, churches could provide a pre-packed bag of something to help students that are in food insecurities?
Yeah, I mean, I know there's that large, list that I showed earlier of these different food resources, and I'm guessing that it's about identifying like if there's any place that we're missing or any place that we can be more visible. So I think that this would be, I'm thinking of like the Lutheran Campus Center, where they used to have this like this Wednesday meal, but they've had to stop that because of pandemic restrictions and things of that nature. But like, could it be like a pre-packed bag where like that gets to be, it's like, yeah, on Wednesdays you can show up and like we'll kind of give you something you can go back to your dorm and microwave, or prepare somewhere else. So I love that idea. I think there's always going to be a space for that, and it's just about like, can we link up with our campus partners to just to make that happen? I would doubt Emily would say that's a bad idea. So thank you, Robin. That sounds brilliant to me. Yeah. Other than cookies and candy, consumers really use in mail packages from home congregations. All right. I'll say something, but I want other people to jump in here. I think of like all the little things that just like always cost money, right? It's like all those like toiletries, it's just like, you need to, like, for me, like I would need to shave, I need to not smell terrible. I like to have, some way to, wash my, clothes, or like I do have laundry detergent. Like there are certain expenses that kind of just like can creep up on you, where, like those Target runs you might make, or, going to your grocery store and you spend $50, you're like, I can't believe I spent $50 on just these really, basic items. I think having like those type of care packages where it's just like, taking care of yourself. I think even, I mean, it's hard to find things like one size fit all, but I think of this like, undershirts, underwear, like things where, you don't want to go to a thrift store and buy that, like you want to buy that new, and it still, costs, a lot if you're just having to do it, at a certain moment. So yeah, I think there's all sorts of, opportunities for that. Or even, I'm just thinking of like, almost wish we had like some way to like connect, the ways of things that students will be looking for to our congregations that are very, very generous, or might have, extra things. Whereas like, I'm thinking if I was in college, I'd say, sometimes I would need, batteries for my graphing calculator, and like how that's, I go through 12 of those, a semester, and that's another, $15, $20 that maybe I don't have. So those are, and I see other people. Sarah, I see you saying something. You're talking to other people in the office, which is fine. But I'm curious if other people have ideas of what they're seeing needed on campuses or with students.
One thing that Dick Inglet from Sugar Creek, one thing that our congregation, our Care and Compassion Committee does is they write every freshman.
Mhm.
For the first year, they write every freshman like their birthday. They just write them once a month or whatever, have connections with them. And then we ask them if they want to continue through their college career. And we have some that continue through their masters.
Mhm.
The kids, the college folks really like that connection where,
Yeah.
and then when they come back for the summer or for the winter break, they look up because they don't know the people who are writing them necessarily.
Mhm.
So they look up and vice versa. The people who are writing look them up also. So that's been one little thing that we've done, and the college youth really appreciate is those monthly or timely cards.
Mhm. I think that's really important. It's so easy to feel overlooked and forgotten, especially on a huge campus like UW. Just having someone acknowledging your existence and your worth, when you're in the midst of this huge transition, that's really important. Reminds me of like when I worked at the VA, the most effective suicide prevention intervention was postcards from the VA just saying, hey, just checking in and seeing how you're doing. If you need anything, give us a call, come in for an appointment. And it was like that far and away was like the most effective intervention, that they had. I mean, just that connection, that postcard saying, hey, like, I see you, let me know if you need anything, was very powerful. So I'm glad you're doing that. And I think there's, I wish we could do that for everyone here, like for all of our students, even the students that don't come from our congregation, but your hand would probably cramp up after, the first 10,000. But yeah, I love that idea.
I think that many in our congregations would be surprised by the number of homeless folks, right? Because I think our stereotype is often folks go away to college, they stay in the dorms.
Mhm.
And so the number of individuals who are homeless, I think would surprise
Mhm.
many. Do you have ideas about how we could get that word out? I found your graph really powerful, but how do we dismantle that stereotype about the traditional college student?
So I mean, again, I think it comes down to like, where can we have this intersecting point between our students and our congregations? And like the people that I think about the most are like where I see this like homelessness piece coming into play, is we have a lot of students who have a really, rough, family life. And they're sort of saying like, they, might close the dorms or we have to be moved out at a certain point. And like, I need someplace safe to go, in between here or there. And like, I've always wondered if there's a way, like what is a safe, like boundaried way for like the church to help out in these situations where, it's really hard to hear sometimes where students are like, I'm just not going to be safe if I go home right now. Like, I mean, it's like, I'm supposed to go home. Like maybe I made plans to go home, or if I will go home, but if things get bad, where do I go? And again, oftentimes they are leaving Madison, they're going to their home communities, but like having some safe spaces, especially like over the holidays, especially over, times when other student spaces might not be available for them. I think that can be very powerful because oftentimes the homelessness is not like 365 homelessness. It's this transition between like, well, my lease ends, on August 1st and doesn't start until August 15th. So I have 2 weeks where I have nowhere to be, and there doesn't feel like there's a safe place for me to go. And as much as anything, I think like this comes down to this networking, because I'm sure like we're all thinking in our minds right now, like, yeah, I could see a place like where our church could offer this, or we could do that. But it's just like, how do we get, something like a boundary and organized on our side? And then once that's there, I do think there's probably ways to get the word out through UHS or through, Lutheran Campus Center, or through, anything else that has our connections in like the downtown area. There's possibilities there. Yeah, so I'd love to get anything moving that way, just so that way we have more of those resources. because right now it's just, we just kind of have to make it up, right? Is it sort of like, okay, let's talk about a safety plan. Let's talk about like how you survive being in a toxic or abusive environment if you have a car, if you don't have a car. And yeah, that could be a great value added for a church.
Thank you. I love that thought because it does change it up to being, instead of chronic homelessness, it's intermittent homelessness, which
Mhm.
isn't, it's a different spin for adults who are now at college from what children who are in schools face, right? During break times where holidays and breaks are often horrible for elementary and middle and high school kids
Mhm.
because their family situations are unsafe.
Yeah.
And they don't look forward to those times because they're unsafe times. It's the adult version of that for our college students.
And I'm just thinking on the fly here, which is what I do. I'm a verbal processor, and like hearing you say that, I think like, and there's so many students who are looking for, either whether it's work or it's volunteer opportunities. I'm like, are there ways we could like potentially have options for people to be like, oh yeah, I want to go on like that mission trip idea, or just like I could help out at some church for 2 weeks, over winter break, and like maybe, I grew up in Bethel Lutheran, so they used to have like an apartment there for like one person who would work there on site, and like I'm guessing there might be arrangements where this might not be widely advertised, but just knowing that some of these spaces exist and we can kind of keep that metaphorically in our back pocket for some of our students here, or whatever might be a good fit. Yeah, it seems like it's just a couple good ideas away. Yeah.
Thank you. Other comments and questions this afternoon for Bjorn? What has Sarah found?
So apparently she does want to be associated with me. My partner, my spouse there just popped into frame. Hi, Dara. She's waving, in case you're wondering.
And just like that, she's gone. For those of you without your cameras on.
The intermittent homelessness, my daughter experienced that shortly. I just want to remind everybody that happens at our Lutheran schools and the other state schools. It's not just a Madison phenomenon. So, just putting it out there. There's more connecting places, that could be beneficial for people.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, thank you. Yep, absolutely. Anything else today? Thank you so much for joining us today, Bjorn, and for giving us a lot to think about and new frames for us to think about ways we can interact with not only UW-Madison, as Julie points out, but many of our college students all across our synod and really beyond our synod. So thank you for giving us some new ways to think about caring for our college students. And thank you all for joining us this afternoon. We will see you again in 2 weeks when Dick Inglet, who I think is still on board, will be joining us and talking to us, speaking with us, joining us in conversation about some ways that we can care for congregations. So you'll be seeing a clip about that in What Matters very soon. But again, thank you for joining us, and I hope you will all have a pleasant afternoon. Thank you.
Thanks for having me. Take care.
Thanks.
People who are on at the end, if they're really still or not.